Welcome into the DNVR Rockies podcast, brought to you by Strava Craft Coffee. Don't forget to use the promo code DNVR25. You'll save 25% off your purchase of that CBD-infused, deliciously rich, and potentially life-altering Strava Craft Coffee. I'm your host, Drew Kreisman. I'm the managing editor of DNVR Rockies. With me for this episode is the voice of the Colorado Rockies on AT&T Sportsnet and the host of the Drew Goodman podcast. It's Drew Goodman.
What's happening, Drew? How we doing, man?
Feeling good. I'll tell you what, Goody, for people who are in the business of baseball, boy, did we get some treats over the last couple of days. One of the oldest cliches, I've said it on this show, I'm sure you've said it several times on the air, is that when you show up to the ballpark, flip on the TV, turn on the radio with our friends Jack and Mike, you never know what you're going to get. So what was more wild? The Colorado Rockies playing an incredibly long game that went extras, that was only supposed to go 7 and ended with a starting pitcher playing right field, or this year's road Rockies going into LA and just playing an incredibly solid baseball game where they never fell behind and the bullpen slammed the door shut and they won with relatively little fuss?
Well, that's an interesting question. Chicago, the 3 games there didn't go as you would like. The Cubs are reeling. The Cubs are not very good. The Rockies are better than the Cubs right now, so it's disappointing when you look at it, from a macro standpoint and see that they lost 2 of 3. Sens have pitched a great game on Monday. They're up 4-1 in the 8th, and we know what happened there with the walks, and then Bard has been struggling. So that was tough. Gutty way to come back in game 2. It took 10 innings. That was an impressive win. But in terms of playing the game really well from start to finish and all of the elements of good baseball, as you were alluding to, Drew, that win last night in LA, and we know how good the Dodgers are, and we know how great they are at home, and we know how tough it's been for the Rockies to beat the Dodgers anywhere, especially LA. I would defer to that game last night. And again, you got a great start from Kyle Freeland. What is that? 11, 12 in a row? I think it's 12 in a row. It's 12 starts in a row. He's got a 2.5 ERA. He's been marvelous. He's been the 2018 version after, playing catch up his first 5 starts after being out for a couple of months. And you got long balls and some of the guys that we've watched improve in front of our eyes. Elias Diaz hitting his 15th home run already. And the bullpen was really good. Bard slides out of the 9th inning. He was good in the 8th. And then after, they called it a base hit, but I'm sure Brendan Rodgers will tell you that's a play he's got to make in the 9th inning at any time. And but 3 straight strikeouts for Carlos Estevez. So I'm going to defer to that one. It was a really well played baseball game, and they defeated a great team that is super hot in their domain.
Yeah. In addition to all the things you said, about the Dodgers being good, they have so much to play for. This is also not, I feel like the Rockies have at times in years past been in this situation, whether the Rockies it was 17 and 18 and they were competing for spots as well, even with the Dodgers, or other years where the Rockies were maybe out of it more and they were so far out in front, they were already starting to rest guys by this point, right? We remember those years with the Dodgers, but they do not want to play a 1-game wild card to decide their season with everything they've done and the additions they made at the trade deadline. And they are still trailing those San Francisco Giants. They saw them lose. They knew the Giants had lost. And so in their minds, they've just got to take care of business here. They were coming with everything. They were by no means letting up on the gas because they're the Dodgers and they're overlooking the Rockies. They're trying to win that ball game. And the Rockies came with everything they had and got them good, and it was a really enjoyable baseball game to watch.
It was a really enjoyable baseball game. Yes, the Dodgers are playing for a ton. It's not like the Dodgers are going through the motions by any stretch of the imagination. They did have a bullpen day, but the kid Jackson, who threw the bulk of the innings, threw the baseball very well. Charlie basically came out and said, if he's going to fire that heater, I'm going to jump on it. And he jumped on a 100-mile-an-hour fastball. He got the barrel out and he drove it out of the ballpark, as just the second road home run of the year. When you talk about the Dodgers and the Giants, as wonderful a year as the Giants have had, and they've been the surprise team in baseball. Now I put them above the Red Sox because the Red Sox have struggled of late. I think nobody had the Giants doing what they're doing. I still, with 30 some odd games left, would if somebody said, "Hey, pick a pony," I'd hook my chips, if you will, to the Dodgers. I just think, they're getting healthy again. They're so deep, as we know, and that's not to be in any way disparaging or slight what the Giants have done, but I just that Dodger team is good. I was talking to Buddy about this yesterday. I said, where do they rank in all your years in baseball? And he said, man, they're up there. He goes, I don't want to go big red machine. He goes, because that's kind of sacrilegious. I mean, and so on. But he said, top to bottom, I mean, they're as good as any team he's seen. Think about it, Drew. They've lost 4/5 of their rotation, and they still roll out Walker Buehler, Cy Young candidate. Now, Max Scherzer, Cy Young candidate. So, and then Urias behind those two guys. It's pretty formidable.
It is absolutely wild, the amount of talent they have. But and I agree with you. I think the smart money is still on them overtaking it. But it's going to be interesting to see the role that the Rockies play in this down the stretch, because they're playing a lot of these teams. And right now, what Patrick and I were talking about a couple of days ago, maybe about a week ago now, this is a team that nobody wants to come to Coors Field with important games on their schedule late in the season. But then you take one from the Dodgers in their place, and I looked at the numbers just since May 21st. The Rockies are 44-40. I mean, that's not a small sample size of
it's more than half
games. Yeah, that's more than half of a baseball season. Now we know, there's been some, they've caught some Cubs here and there and the Marlins, and I get it, but those teams are always on the schedule, and everybody else plays them too.
Hey, listen, to your point, Tampa's 16-1 against Baltimore. I mean, Baltimore's awful, but it still counts. Go talk to the San Diego Padres about beating up on teams they should beat up on. The Rockies, people from San Diego would point, hey, you got to beat the Rockies. The Rockies won the season series 11-8. They didn't play well against Arizona. Arizona has had an awful year. The Rockies, it's probably lower middle class where they are, 10 games below 500. Not awful, but certainly, they're not. They'd have a lot of work to do to be a 500 club. So you beat who's on your schedule, and there's always going to be high quality teams, middle of the road teams, and then teams that are also rans. So the Rockies 44-40 over 84 games is nothing to sneeze at.
Yeah, it's been interesting, and there's one other point that just for these last two games before we get into some of the bigger picture stuff that we don't talk a lot about Bud Black, other than we're generally heaping praise on him, which I think is fair, and we do every once in a while. Patrick and I will get into some critical stuff, but there's one thing I thought we really should point out, that he could, in a year like this, dig his heels in, stick with his veteran closer, and say, I'm not going to make a change. We're probably not going to the postseason. I want to keep everybody where they're at. I want to keep some stability. I don't want to maybe embarrass my guy, though we know Daniel Bard's not embarrassed by it or whatever. But he didn't have to make a change, is what I'm saying. He could have stuck with his guy. But that he went, let's give Estevez a shot. Let's get him in there. Let's flip him around. Let's do something. Let's inject some juice into that bullpen. Everyone needs to be doing a little better. Let's see if shaking it up. And I think it's easy to say, oh, yeah, of course he could do that. But he very easily could have gone the other way. And I like the active managing to try to get every win that he can, regardless of whatever people may think about reverse standings and all of that. Buddy's trying to help his guys win baseball games, and I thought that was a good move for a manager to make at this point in the season.
I applaud him for doing it. He does everything in the right way. He's dealing with a very bright adult. I mean, he's in his mid-30s. I mean, Daniel Bard understood it. I talked to Buddy about it yesterday. He said he was great. They talked about, more importantly than the conversation about, hey, I'm taking out of the ninth inning, which he understood. They were talking about the mechanics and pitch selection of getting him back online against left-handed hitters in particular, who've really hurt him. Over 1,000 OPS this year and a 345 batting average. And last night, listen, he was better. He attacked more with his fastball against lefties and more of his hard slider. That's he wants him to simplify things. Sometimes when you have a really observant guy, bright guy, a studier, they can do too much in terms of thinking their way through how to handle, various hitters. So listen, Buddy, like anybody, is a competitor. I hate, when people talk about they're tanking. You know what? Don't tell that. You use that term, and if you walked in Baltimore's clubhouse and say, "Hey, you fellas are tanking right now," somebody's going to knock you out. But seriously, because they're going. You think they're going out there and go, "Hey, let's just go through the motions, fellas." Their livelihoods at stake. There's individuals who are trying to stick around the big leagues or to play for a contract, arbitration eligible guys. That's bunk. Yeah, overall, does Baltimore know where they are and they have a really, well-stocked farm system? That doesn't mean anything until they perform at the big league level. So to tell Buddy Black, hey, listen, man, mail this in. Buddy is trying to win baseball games while developing some of his younger talent. And he's been able to do that. Connor Joe's a great story. The final emergence of Brendan Rodgers is a really good story. So I kind of get irritated when people say, "Oh, they're tanking or they should tank." No competitor is ever going to, "Oh yeah, we don't care about the outcome here because we're trying to lose. We're trying to get the first pick in the draft or the second pick in the draft." No guarantee.
Yeah. I sent out a tweet the other day, and it got a lot of likes, but I think by half people, for polar opposite reasons. It was really funny because I was being sarcastic, and I think a lot of people thought I was being serious. I
saw that tweet, Drew.
Yeah.
I saw that tweet, and I will tell you that I knew you were being sarcastic because I know you and I know where you stand. But if you just read it really quickly, you can make you pause for a second and go, really? So I'm glad you clarified it.
And the reason I wanted to talk about it a little bit here is because it speaks to that point that the point I was trying to illustrate is that we've all gotten kind of brainwashed into this very weird space. And it's not that it's wrong. Patrick and I have gone back and forth about this. I totally understand the intellectual argument toward tanking and rebuilds and all of that stuff. But what I was trying to point out was we've now got this weird system where fans are supposed to praise teams like Baltimore, who are supposedly losing on purpose, and be angry at teams like the Rockies, who are trying to win. And this argument that you should actually not be happy that they're winning baseball games right now, about the 44 and 40 that we just talked about, because that will make the Rockies think that they're better than they are, and they're actually not that good, so they should try to get worse. To me, is just mind-boggling, because it's like you should have a system, and this is the last part. I'll get off the soapbox right after this, where everyone should be trying to get better. Like you said, Goody, compete. We don't come to professional sports to see the best athletes in the world try not to win. That doesn't make any sense. And the Rockies have publicly declared their desire to immediately compete, and that has been met with reticence in this time is baffling.
That ideology suggests that the path to being a contender is only through being horseshit for a few years.
Right.
Because they'll point to Houston. Houston lost 100+ games for 3 years. They got a lot of top picks, and not all of them, but Carlos Correa, leading the charge, certainly panned out. Bregman was a guy they were able to take near the top of the draft. That one worked out. There's no guarantee. And the people I want populating a locker room, a clubhouse that I am involved with or I'm rooting for as a fan is a bunch of hard-nosed competitors. Now, the Rockies are going to fall somewhere in that middle class, as I said earlier, lower middle class right now. But that doesn't mean that they've done harm to eventually trying to get back to, putting a roster together that can compete for a division title and ultimately a pennant and a world championship. And I know that sounds like pie in the sky because they never won the division title, but you got to start. You got to start somewhere. And
it always sounds like pie in the sky until you do it.
Right. So you got to me, you build with guys that can play and guys that have that. What we always applaud Kyle Freeland for because he's demonstratively competitive. But listen, German Marquez has it. Senzatella has it. I think Gomber has it. And that's what you're going to win with. I mean, you watch – fans love Connor Joe, right? Well, he's doing really well. Right. You can see, man, it's important to this guy. It's important to this guy. And you're seeing his talent – born out. That's who you want to go to battle with. That's who you want to root for if you're a fan.
Yeah. Well, we toast our Breck Brews. I've still got Strava craft coffee, but our theoretical Breck Brews and Breck Celsius on this day to the competitors out there. Absolutely. You had one of them on your show. We'll talk about them in just a second. But you remember that you can get a bigger Breck Celsius down at the DNVR bar. If you're a member of the family, highly recommend you become a member of the family today. Subscribe at the DNVR.com. You'll get access to all that written content. You'll get access to our Discord channel, which is a private chat room where we're talking baseball 24/7, all the other sports, of course, what you're seeing on TV, any good movies lately, what you're skiing or snowboarding, finding good spots, good deals on stuff like that. Food, I saw people sharing recipes featuring our friends at Hassel Cattle Company today, stuff like that. You get in there, you get all that stuff. You get the annual, we'll send you a free shirt from the DNVR locker. And don't forget, there's still time to email gm@thednvrbar.com and book your fantasy football draft. We'll hook you up with a couple of free pitchers of beer if you bring your friends down, do your fantasy draft at our bar. It's going to be a fun time, going to be a good time. Also a good time, as you know, anytime just around the corner, you get to go down to Ball Arena, watch a little hockey, watch a little basketball, be the season for that before you know it. But our friends at Ball are more than just arena havers. That's actually their more recent thing. They're big into making the aluminum cans, jars, the glass, the sustainable materials. And they've really, really gotten into the aluminum thing because 75% of all of the aluminum that has ever been created is still in circulation. They're really big on having a sustainable environment, on being a good tenant of the planet, and on being a good tenant of their workers. They've got equal hiring practices, and as far as advancement, all of those kinds of things. So if you're looking for some work, text GOLDEN to 77222. You'll get linked to open positions. You can also go directly to jobs.ball.com and search for Golden. Jobs.ball.com and search for Golden, or simply text GOLDEN to 77222. All right, goody. I mentioned it before we were going into those ads there. Austin Gomber. We've talked about him a lot. I feel like you and I both gravitated toward him pretty early in the season, and you had him on the show recently. He's able to, if you haven't listened out there, make sure you're subscribed. You can go and listen. You get a sense of how connected he is, how engaged he is, how intellectual his approach is toward pitching, and the kind of competitor that he is. I really enjoyed particularly something he had to say, Goody, about not feeling like the rotation was like a 1 through 5 situation. Like, oh, okay, you're the 1, you're the 2. And he did actually tip his cap in respect to Marquez, which I appreciate. He said, hey, we know if it's a big, big game, Marquez is getting the ball and we're all behind him, which I thought that's dope. Show that to leadership. It was like, but after that, we're all doing the same things. We're all members of this rotation, and they feel like they run that deep. And I think that is a perfect mentality for, as he put it, a group that's going to be together for presumably several years to come.
You know, they, assuming they sign, and I'd be really surprised if they didn't, if they're able to re-sign John Gray. We've talked a lot about it on your show. You and Patrick have talked about it. I've talked about it on my podcast as well. John wants to be here. The Rockies want him here. They're going to get a deal done. Again, I would be shocked if they did not. So
right.
That group is going to be together going forward. Now, see the Padres, see what's happened with the Dodgers. You need depth. Now, Ryan Rolison's never pitched in the big leagues. You hope he can provide depth. Peter Lambert, we saw for a moment or two, and then he had Tommy John. He'll be back next year. You need more than that. You need it to be quality depth, because you don't know what those guys are yet. You hope, you keep your fingers crossed that, hey, they can be quality guys. You know, Chi-Chi's been a swing guy, but you need guys that can insert. You can insert into that rotation. Because the Rockies been fortunate; those guys have been horses, man. By and large, they stayed healthy. Knock on wood.
Right.
So you're building around that, but they're made of the right stuff. And one of the reasons John Gray really wants to stick around is that he likes the struggle and he likes the story of being able to do it with the Rockies, where they're never anybody's sexy pick, where everyone says you can't pitch at Coors Field. And I really admire that. Yeah. I really admire his gumption to get it done with by and large a group of guys that he's grown up with, and a group of guys that kind of have a like-mindedness to them. The toughness to win at Coors Field, the toughness to take the act on the road. Now they have to get much better out there. So he feels it'll be more meaningful, and I think for fans, it would be meaningful also. Now they got to go dead or done. They need help. We know that.
Right. Yeah, but it's just hard not to look at this rotation and go, man, that is, as Will put it here, kind of connecting these last two conversations together in the comments, says, what have we asked for since 1993? To build around starting pitchers, and now they have that, and some people want to throw it all away. It is kind of wild, right, Will? Like, don't blow that up. Build smartly around it, because you even see, and we know these are the rare moments, but in a game like last night where they're playing the Dodgers in their house, they do get a big moment from a veteran clutch bat in Charlie Early. And then there are two guys who've been going as of late, Kroner and Diaz, give them the late insurance that they need. The rare thing, of course, has been the bullpen holding up. But as we talked about, I think the last time you were on, and I'm preparing an article on this because the parallels are absolutely wild. In 2016, the Rockies had arguably their worst bullpen ever. It was bad. You guys remember Jason Mott and Chad Qualls and that whole situation? They were throwing dudes out there. It was before Scott Oberg or Chris Russin were any good. Like, it was just Boone Logan was the best guy in that bullpen. Okay. To give you a reminder of what we're talking about. And the next year in 2017, it was the best they've ever had. You know what they added? Greg Holland, who hadn't pitched in a year. Now they landed a big one there. That was huge. They needed that. And so you need one of those for next year. But when you go, oh man, how could they possibly go from the bullpen they've had this year in 2021 to an excellent bullpen in 22, where all of a sudden you're winning these games on the regular? Well, there's actually precedence for that within this organization's recent history.
Yeah, there's precedent throughout baseball.
Yeah.
Bullpens, we've talked about bullpen arms. By and large, it's good year, bad year, that sort of thing. And you hope that you take a couple of guys and hope they rebound. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. It obviously, worked a couple of years ago when Greg Holland came back, and he had a terrific year. So the bullpens can be fixed somewhat quickly. You just keep your fingers crossed that that more guys than not are able to step forward and have good years, and then ultimately you have a pretty good bullpen. The other areas, when you talk about augmenting what they already have, if they're able to re-sign CJ Cron, and they need a couple more bats, and I think they're outfield type players is what we're talking about, / first baseman, maybe middle infield now also, because you don't know what's going to happen with Story.
Sure.
I mean, Trevor clearly, to me, you never know. You never know until they get out there. I mean, Trevor's
it's getting a little more interesting, isn't it? You talked about
that. He's hurt. Unfortunately, because I love him as a kid, and I'm just being objective here. He's hurt himself in the open market, and there are other factors, whether he was having an extraordinary year or by his standards a subpar year. I think that what's happened with Frankie Lindor going into a new CBA, I think there are going to be more teams, even the wealthy teams, that are going to be cautious in doling out these 8, 9, 10-year, $250+ million deals. I really do. And so I think Trevor would have been hurt in that regard to begin with. That's not to say he wasn't going to get a super lucrative deal. And then there may be a team out there that says, listen, this kid's too talented. He's going to bounce back. The medicals check out, because they're going to check out that elbow and wonder why, he struggled throwing the baseball this year. But they're going to bet on a guy with his makeup and his track record. And so somebody out there may, say, hey, listen, we'll give you 5 years and $125 million or something like that. But it may not be in that realm. But anyhow, in terms of the Rockies getting better, they need at least 2 additional adult bats. I keep using that term. Yeah. And I always go back to, Drew, the Michael Kadire type, the Justin Renault type. They're not going to break the bank. They're going to be pros in their approach at the plate. They still have enough left in the tank. They're going to be great in the clubhouse. But again, they're not looking for $120 million, because they're at that point in their career where maybe a 2 or 3 year deal for 45 or 50, something like that, would strike their fancy.
Yeah. And I mean, and again, they've had a decent track record with some of those guys, even on the lower end of that spectrum. CJ Cron is a guy, they didn't break the bank. Look at the production you're getting out of him. So it'll be interesting to see what they do there. All right, I do want to talk to you about a new issue that has become a little bit of one of my new pet issues. But of course, I always love placing bets on DraftKings Sportsbook, having a whole lot of fun on there, making a little bit of extra cash, or sometimes just making a few extra at-bats a game that much more exciting. You got someone to hit a home run, boom, 4 at-bats in that game become much, much more exciting. You've got a pitcher to go over under a certain number of strikeouts, and he's sitting there on just a half a strikeout under what you need. So you need 1 more K, and he's on 90 pitches. And so, this is probably his last inning. Ooh, that gets the juices flowing. It's a whole lot of fun. Check them out. Now is obviously, as I've said before, the best time to get in. They've had some great deals before in the past. This is probably the best one. So if you've ever been hesitant, by the way, and if you're new to it, they make it really easy to use. You can also watch our DNVR Bets show, or if you're in our Discord, if you're a subscriber, chat with people. It's super easy to figure out. You can play super low dollar amounts, and you'll get $200 basically out of the gate to bet on whatever you want, because when you download the top-rated DraftKings Sportsbook app now and use promo code DNVR, you will receive $200 in free bets when you just place $1 on any Week 1 college football game. It's promo code DNVR to get your free $200 in bets instantly for a limited time only at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL. Must be 21 or older, Colorado only, new customers only. Restrictions apply. See DraftKings.com/sportsbook for details. And if you have a gambling problem, call 1-800-522-4700. All right, Goody. I recently wrote up. I've switched positions on the shift. I have become a ban the shift guy, and I was not before. So why don't I start by just letting you know where do you have a position on the shift at all? Because it's not one of the. I don't think there's been a huge momentum toward banning it, but I think the talk is starting.
It's an interesting one because I could be persuaded to move from what my position has been, and that is it's the manager's discretion and his defensive coordinator, their discretion, their analytics department to play their players, their pawns anywhere they want defensively.
Right.
And, it's part of the fascination of how teams go about their business. And maybe it's incumbent on the offenses to figure out a way to combat that as opposed to, just continuing to hit into the shift if you're a left-handed batter, a left-handed power hitter. But I'm not beyond, as I stated a moment ago, being persuaded that, okay, you can move, a guy up the middle, but he can't cross over and be on the right side initially, or you can shift, but you can't use the short fielder. Everybody has to have their feet on the dirt. I still would lean against that, but if I'm not trying to be wishy-washy, but I guess I am, is that I think I could be compelled to move in a different direction. I go back to Drew a few days ago. The Rockies played an inning with all those walks where there was 33 minutes of baseball and the ball was never in play.
Yeah.
Awful.
Yeah.
You and I love the game, and you love the minutia of the game. That's boring. Okay?
Yeah.
That's boring.
Yeah. And that's coming from two people who hate using that word to describe our game.
Right.
But that was boring.
Right. Yeah. If you're going to try to, bring new people into the game and say, hey, man, it's exciting, it's this and that. And then you're going, well, what's exciting about this?
Yeah.
That's why I tell you my current position.
Yeah.
I could back off that position as well.
No, I love it because that had basically been my position for quite some time as well, especially there's risk reward. The managers are deciding, what to do here. And particularly that, and I've seen a lot of this since I published the piece, people saying just bunt or hit the ball the other way. Come on, it's a strategy. Counter it with play on the field. And then I went to the All-Star game, and I'm giving away the article a little bit here. Please subscribe and go read it anyway. But I went to the All-Star game, sitting there with my guy, Patrick Lyons. We'd all been there to see Shohei Ohtani all weekend, and he put on a show in the home run derby, went out in the first round. It was a lot of fun. What a first round it was, but a little mild disappointment we didn't get to see him go a little farther. That's okay. He's going to start on the mound, and he's going to lead off the next game. First thing he does, hits a 90-mile-an-hour sharp, hard ground ball that would have been through the right side for a single most of the years you and I have been watching baseball, but the second baseman was in shallow right field, came right to him, picked it up, threw it to first. And I went, all right, okay. Next batter, Vladimir Guerrero Jr. hits the hardest ball of the game, 111-mile-per-hour sinking line drive that nearly took Max Scherzer's head off. He ducked. Again, it's going straight. That's an up-the-middle single for 100 years. But, of course, there's a fielder right there. So instead of runners at first and third, juicing the crowd, baseball game going, we've got 2 outs on balls hit right at guys where the pitcher didn't really beat the hitter, but he's got 2 outs. The next guy struck out, nothing doing. And that was really the moment I went, even if you still make outs there, if you drew a line straight down second base and just said 2 guys got to stand on the left side, 2 guys on the right. Beyond that, shift all over you want. If you've got a guy pulled up the middle a little bit more, okay. They would have had to have at least made a play. So I started thinking about all the other possibilities with runners first and third, nobody out. Now we've got some juice in this ball game right away. Or maybe the fielders still get there, but we've got 2 web gems to start the game, and we've seen Adam Frazier and Fernando Tatis Jr. make a couple of stellar plays. What we saw was a computer decided ahead of the game that that's where those guys are going to hit the ball, and it was right. And that's neat and all, but I'm not convinced it's better baseball. And
no, and I think it's naive of people to think, oh, just beat the shift by hit the ball the other way. It ain't that easy. It is not that easy. You got guys throwing 98 and with movement and sliders and breaking balls, and they're busting guys in, and it's not that easy, folks. It's not that easy to just, I'm going to hit the ball over there. It's not a video game.
And right.
And even bunting is not. And if it's a certain guy, if you have a Freddie Freeman up or even a Charlie Blackmon, okay, in certain situations you're down a couple of runs and you're leading off the inning and it's a 7th, you can lay down a bunt to create traffic. Okay, that's a good baseball play. Other than that, it's not a good baseball play to have your middle of the order guys just laying down a bunt so they can say they got a hit and they beat the shift. And again, it's hard to lay down a bunt when we watch guys fail all the time. I don't know what the answer is because you have to be careful with this because there are game on the line situations where we've seen Buddy do this. You bring 5, the winning runs at third,
right.
and you bring 5. Like a Garrett Hampson comes in from the outfield. You go with 2 outfielders and you have 5 infielders, and I like that. I think it's interesting to see how managers combat being on the precipice of losing a ball game. So
yeah,
let's see how it plays out.
Yeah, that's an interesting. I hadn't thought about the when you bring the outfielder in element of it. But the other thing to your point, and I've always been kind of like, hey, it's not just about the entertainment, but it is ultimately about entertainment. I started thinking about other sports. The 3 seconds under the basket in the NBA, like that. Basically, you could just as easily argue, well, then shoot the ball from further out. Don't go in there and try to dunk on dudes if it's not a good strategy. And I want to place my 7-footer under the basket and just put him there and deal with it. Well, they put a rule in that says, no, that's not really that much fun to watch. If we make it so there has to be constant movement, it's just more fun. And it is. It's better basketball. And so I feel like in the same way, like you said, it's just not viable strategy for most of the best hitters to change their game so much that they're trying to bunt or hit through the shift. That's not a brand of baseball too many people want to see anyway. Whereas these laser line drives, hard grounders that used to get through, or maybe they're diving stops and great defensive plays now. But either way, we're increasing action in the game. We're getting the ball in play a lot more often. And, there's even been a lot of interviews with guys lately about the 3 true outcomes thing. And they talk about the shift as an element of it, that you're trying to hit a home run because putting the ball hard in play isn't quite as rewarding as it used to be. I think if we went back to an era where guys were rewarded for hitting the ball hard in play, we'd see more of it. And, I think it's one of the more natural ways that we can get more action in the game. Like I said, I'm a recent convert here, but it really was that moment in the All-Star game where I went, because it's a showcase, right? You go there to see the best baseball players in the world do their thing. And when Ohtani and Vladdy both did these kind of great things and weren't rewarded for it, I felt like, what a missed opportunity for this crowd. And then I realized that's kind of true of every game, just on a smaller scale. But every baseball game, you want to see the best do the best. And that a guy made an out, not because the fielder made a great play or the pitcher made a great pitch, but because the computer made a great educated guess, to me is less entertaining and less baseball-y.
Yeah, I mean, there's been so many times calling games where, you were taught for years and years and years, stay in the middle of the field, stay, hit it back through the originator. And I've seen bullets, as you said, with Vladdy Jr. I remember that swing, right past the pitcher's ear, basically, and it's an out. And sometimes calling these games, on monitors when they're on the road, because of COVID protocols still and not being in the ballpark, you'll see a ball that's smoked up the middle. I saw one in the last day or two, and you're thinking, oh, base hit, line drive. And there's a guy standing right there, boom, fields it or catches the line drive. So again, I'm being redundant, but I could be persuaded the other way. The ball has to be in play more. The ball has to be in play more. There has to be more excitement. And listen, I think it's more of an opportunity. Here's an argument against what I was saying earlier. If you have two guys on the left side, two guys on the right side, these marvelous athletes, the best athletes that baseball's ever had and the best conditioned athletes baseball's ever had, there's more opportunity to see a Tatis show his great range or Trevor Story show his great range, Ryan McMahon, because, well, there's not a guy 15 feet to my left. There's no one for 50 feet or 60 feet or whatever it is.
Right.
But yeah, we'll see where this was going to be a very interesting offseason for a variety of reasons. But with the collective bargaining agreement having to be settled, and hopefully there's no sort of lockout, and both sides realize that would be catastrophic for the game, just like they did damage, I thought, last summer when they're quibbling and half the country's unemployed. But they're going to talk about all of these things moving forward. So this is not the last of it that people are hearing.
Right. Well, all right. Last couple of games here in LA, and then off to Texas, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So what are you looking forward to seeing here out of the team next few days? We had some people talking about it earlier, what they've had their eyes on. Mark really enjoying the evolution of Rogers and McMahon, and of course Joe. We can't go an entire DNVR Rockies podcast without mentioning Connor Joe. I think it's illegal. I think I get fired if that happens. So,
well, he's a joy to watch because you're going to get a great at bat, and I think I'm speaking for a lot of Rockies fans and a lot of fans of the DNVR Rockies that are regular followers of you and Patrick and read your stuff and listen to the podcast on a daily basis, and hopefully check mine out as well. Is that if the game is on the line and you could pick one or two guys to take that at bat for the Rockies, would say the winning run at third or the tying run at third and the winning run at second, Connor Joe is probably going to be one of those two guys because you're going to get a high quality at bat every time. We know it's baseball. They're not going to come through even half the time. Nobody does that. Nobody hits 500 with runners in scoring position over a long period of time. But Connor Joe is in that conversation. He's been terrific. Now, to your original question of what I'm looking forward to, I'll start specifically with tonight. John Gray going against David Price. You'd like to see another, mirror image of last night where the Rockies, are able to create some traffic, get some big swings, 3 home runs last night. And the rotation is coming off a great July. Kyle Freeland has continued to pitch well, but there's been a little hiccup, for Herman of late. I think Sen pitched pretty well of late. There's been a bit of a hiccup from John Gray. It's not been awful, but the last 4, I think it's a 6+ ERA. So you'd like to see him return and have one of those 6 or 7 inning type of performances where he just gives up a couple of runs and gives the Rockies a great chance, as Kyle did last night. So, you're hoping for kind of a little bit of a bounce back performance for John tonight specifically.
Yeah, definitely looking forward to that. I've been noticing there's an irony to the fact that the team overall has been playing much better, but this month of August, really just the last couple of weeks, and like you said, it's mostly just been Gray's been a bit more hittable, Gomber's been a bit more hittable, Marquez has been a bit more hittable, and none of them have been terrible. They'd all been so good. Like the starting rotation had been stellar for months, and now they're kind of okay right now.
Yeah, I mean, in the case of Gomber, misplaced slider in his last outing that Patrick Wisdom of the Cubs hit out. I thought his stuff was really good. I thought he was dominant. He struck out, I believe, 9 again, 8 or 9, something like that. But yeah, you got to eliminate that 1 or 2 pitches that allows another team maybe to get back in the ball game if it's a close affair. So, across the board, you'd like to see these guys return kind of to the form they had in July. Again, Kyle's been there. Senza's been pitching well, but with Gray, with Gomber, and with Marquez moving forward.
And it is always fun to win in LA. Even more fun if you can win a series against a competitive, contending, trying to get them. So let's see. I mean, it's certainly on the table at this point. The Rockies have been much better on the road as of late when the starting pitching is going well. We know they can do anything. So wouldn't that be a story? That might catch a few national headlines, but people looking in going, wait, what happened?
Hey, if you beat LA, you get high marks, and I enjoy watching LA, even though I want nothing more than to see the Rockies beat them and beat them decisively. I like greatness. I like watching teams that are outstanding. I like how they go about their business. I like the at-bats they take, and it's such a deep lineup. For 2 straight days, Max Muncy's not in the starting lineup. He'd been scuffling a little bit. He came off the bench as a pinch hitter. He's an MVP, legitimate MVP candidate in the National League, and they could afford to keep him out of the lineup 2 days in a row. One was kind of a rest day, the final game in San Diego. Yesterday, rest day, plus they're facing another left-hander. He was 0 for 18 before his strikeout last night. Keep him out of the lineup. Bellinger, I still think he probably isn't 100% from the shoulder surgery.
Yeah.
He's not had a Bellinger year, but this is a former MVP who's still young and gifted and scares the heck out of you when he comes up. They're so deep. Those 2 guys aren't even in the lineup, and they have Will Smith, who's extraordinary, batting 8th. So when you beat that team, it means a whole heck of a lot.
Yeah. All right, we'll see what they do. We know y'all will be watching on AT&T Sportsnet. You'll be watching the whole team there. Make sure you're downloading to the I don't think that's how you say it. It's downloading to the Drew Goodman podcast.
That's something I would say, Drew. Come on, man.
Make sure you are downloading to the Drew Goodman podcast. Fantastic conversation with Austin Gomber. Enjoyed as you get deeper into your thoughts on the Story situation, all that stuff. Must listen for any Colorado Rockies fan. We know you'll be watching along for the rest of this road trip. Hit us up on social media with your thoughts at Drew Creasman, at Drew Goodman 42. Of course, at Patrick D. Lyons and at DNVR_Rockies. Don't forget to subscribe to the DNVR.com for access to all the written content, the Discord channel, the free shirts, and all the other cool stuff that you get just for being a member of the family. Other than that, we can only ask that you continue to be absolutely awesome baseball fans out there. We'll continue being absolutely Drew Goodman and Drew Creasman in here. And until next time, we will see you at the ballpark.